The following account was taken from real testimonies. Names and details have been altered for privacy.
It was supposed to be a simple weekend trip. A quick escape from Marrakesh to see the desert dunes. Ride camels, eat tagine under the stars, and be back in time for Monday's flight. We were four friends, me, Daniel, Sophie, and Karim, crammed into a rented white Jeep that had seen better days. Music, laughter, and the scent of mint tea still on our clothes from breakfast. We had no guide, just a half-downloaded map and Karim's confidence. "Don't worry," he said. "I've done this drive before." By the time the city disappeared in the rearview mirror, it already felt like another world, the colors softer, the air heavier, the silence stretching longer between songs. The road to the desert was endless, and as the sun dipped lower, the shadows of the dunes grew sharp and unfamiliar. It happened somewhere after the last gas station. We missed a turn, maybe two, and the paved road became gravel, then sand. At first, it was an adventure. Sophie hung her arm out the window, filming the horizon. Daniel joked about how this is where the movie soundtrack starts. But the jokes faded when the GPS froze. No signal, no road signs, just sand, stretching forever. Karim slowed the car. "Don't worry," he said again. But his voice didn't sound the same. By nightfall, we'd realized the truth. We weren't just lost. We had no idea where we were. We set up camp beside the Jeep, its headlights the only light for miles. The air was colder than we expected. Daniel started a small fire with the lighter and paper from the glove box. Sophie tried to stay calm, but she kept glancing toward the dunes like she was waiting for someone, for something to appear. We rationed what little water we had left, one bottle, half full. Karim said we'd drive again at dawn, said it like a promise, but I could hear the whirring in his breathing. That night, I lay awake listening to the wind move over the sand. It sounded like whispers, not words, just the sound of emptiness pretending to speak. When the sun came up, the world was blinding. Every direction looked the same, waves of gold and white that hid the horizon. We started driving again, slowly, carefully, until the sand swallowed the tires. We dug with our hands, used the car mats for traction. Nothing worked. By noon, we were stranded for real. The heat was unbearable. Sophie's lips cracked. Daniel wrapped a scarf around his head like the locals we'd seen, but sweat still poured down his neck. Karim slammed the steering wheel. No signal, no road, nothing. How is that possible? I wanted to tell him to stay calm, but the truth was, I was scared too. We decided to walk north, we thought, toward the mountains we could barely see in the distance. Each of us carried what we could: a bottle of water split for ways, a flashlight, and a pack of dates. We walked for hours. The dunes moved with the wind, rearranging themselves like the desert didn't want to be remembered. By late afternoon, Sophie stopped walking. Her legs gave out. "I can't," she said. Her voice was dry, almost gone. We sat with her, the sun setting behind us, casting our shadows long and thin. When night came, we didn't light a fire. We didn't speak. We just lay close together under a sky full of stars that looked too close to trust. The next morning, Karim was gone, his backpack too. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd gone to find help. But when I saw his footprints heading deeper into the dunes, I knew it wasn't that simple. Daniel wanted to follow. Sophie begged him not to. "He'll come back," she whispered, as if saying it could make it true. We waited for hours. No one came. The sun rose higher, and the air shimmered like liquid. When I blinked, the world wobbled. My mind started playing tricks. The sound of engines, the glint of metal that wasn't there. By the time Daniel stood up again, his voice was trembling. "If we stay here, we die," he said. Then he started walking toward the same direction Karim had gone. I didn't stop him. Sophie and I stayed behind. We had one sip of water left. We shared it, though neither of us swallowed much. That night, the stars felt closer. The wind sounded different, not cruel, just tired. We took turns calling their names. Karim, Daniel. The wind answered both. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke, Sophie was staring at the horizon, her face pale in the moonlight. "Someone's out there," she whispered. I looked. For a moment, I saw it too. A faint light, flickering in the distance, like a lantern swinging. We didn't speak. We just started walking. The air cooled fast, the kind of cold that feels like it's coming from the ground itself. We followed the flickering light, not talking, not thinking, just moving. Every few steps, I glanced at Sophie to make sure she was still there. Her scarf had come loose, her hair full of sand, her eyes half closed but still determined. The light seemed close, then far, then close again. Sometimes it vanished completely, swallowed by the dunes. We would stop, breathe, listen, then it would appear again, a little to the left, a little higher. It felt like it was pulling us somewhere, and by that point, it didn't matter where. Hours passed. The stars wheeled overhead, cold and perfect. I kept thinking about water, about shade, about noise. But there was only the crunch of our boots and the sound of our breathing. When we finally reached the source of the light, it wasn't a lantern. It was a metal pole stuck in the sand, a solar lamp marking the edge of something, a road. We both stood there, speechless, a narrow asphalt line cutting through the desert, empty but real. Sophie started to laugh, a raw, broken sound that cracked into sobs. I laughed too. I couldn't help it. In the distance, faint headlights shimmered. We waved, screamed, stumbled into the middle of the road. The car slowed, stopped. Two men got out, speaking Arabic too fast for me to understand. One of them handed us water. It tasted like life. They put us in the back of a pickup and drove. I remember the rhythm of the engine, the cool metal under my palms, and the sky above us growing pale again with dawn. We woke up in a small outpost, a handful of buildings and a rusted radio tower. Someone gave us bread, mint tea, and blankets. We drank, ate, and cried quietly, like people remembering how to be human again. A few hours later, a rescue team went back into the dunes. They found Daniel near an old well, unconscious but alive. He'd followed Karim's trail for almost 10 kilometers before collapsing. Karim, they found him too, 2 days later. He tried to circle back toward the jeep. He almost made it. No one said much after that. We just sat in silence, each of us holding a different part of the story we didn't know how to tell. Back in Marrakesh, everything felt wrong. The noise, the color, the weight of people moving fast. Sophie couldn't stop flinching at car horns. Daniel walked slower, quieter. I found myself avoiding mirrors. Before we flew home, we visited a small market. An old man there sold trinkets made from desert stone. Sophie bought one for each of us. That night, we sat on the hotel roof, the call to prayer echoing in the distance, and placed the stones in a row on the table. No one said Karim's name, but we didn't need to. It was there, in the silence between us. It took me months to understand what happened out there. We hadn't been fighting the desert. We'd been fighting ourselves, our impatience, our pride, our need to be in control. When people ask what it felt like to be lost, I tell them this. It's not the sand or the sun that breaks you. It's the moment you realize how small you really are, and sometimes, if you're lucky, that realization doesn't destroy you, it humbles you. Weeks later, back home, the desert still clung to me, not the sand, but the silence. I'd wake up at night and swear I could hear the wind moving over dunes. That same soft, endless hum that felt like breathing. Sophie stopped talking about the trip. Daniel deleted all the photos from his camera. We tried to move on, to box it up as something that had ended, but some stories don't let you. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faint light on the horizon. The one that led us out. Sometimes I still wonder what it really was. A lamp, a chance, or maybe just the desert showing mercy. A year later, I went back, not to the same place, that would have been impossible to find, but to a point somewhere near it. I hired a local guide this time. He knew the desert like language. Each dune, each silence, each shadow, when we stopped to rest. I told him my story, 2 days missing, one friend gone. How it all ended beside a road that wasn't supposed to exist. He listened quietly, then said, "The Sahara takes, but it also returns." I asked him what that meant. He smiled, shrugged. "You came back, maybe that's enough." Before leaving, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the stone Sophie had bought for me. It was smooth, sand-colored, shaped by 1,000 years of wind. I placed it on the ground beside a small patch of dry grass, right where the horizon folded into light. It wasn't an offering, and it wasn't a goodbye. Just a way of saying, we remember. When I turned to go, The wind lifted, carrying a trace of that old whisper. Soft, low, almost kind. And for the first time since those 2 days, I didn't feel lost anymore. When the plane lifted off from Marrakech, the desert unrolled beneath me, endless gold and shadow. I watched it disappear under the clouds. And for a long time, I couldn't tell if I felt relief or guilt. 2 days missing. That's what the news headline said later when they wrote about us. It sounded small. 2 days, like something that could fit neatly between breakfast and a bad dream. But those 48 hours stretched into something larger than time. They became a place I still carry, a part of me that never came back. Daniel moved to Lisbon a few months later. He said he couldn't stand quiet places anymore. Sophie stayed in touch for a while, then stopped answering messages. Maybe we all had to find different ways to keep the silence away. A year after it happened, I got a postcard with no return address. It was a photograph of dunes, taken at sunset. On the back, in faint handwriting, were 4 words. Still following the light, no name, no explanation. I didn't need one. I know it was from Sophie. And maybe, in some quiet way, it was also from the part of ourselves we left there. People ask me now if I was afraid. I always say yes, but not of dying. The real fear wasn't the desert. It was realizing how quickly people unravel when they lose control. The desert doesn't try to kill you. It just shows you who you are without noise, without help, without certainty, and when there's nothing left to distract you. You have to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. That's what those 2 days did. They stripped everything down to what mattered. Water, breath, each other. And then, when the world gave us back, it made sure we'd never look at it the same way again. Sometimes, when it rains, I still find grains of sand stuck in the seams of my old boots. I should have cleaned them long ago, but I never do. Because those grains, that dust, are proof that it happened. That we survived, and that the desert, for all its silence, let us go. Months later, I found myself back on the road again, different country, different sky, but that same restless pull that travel gives you when you're chasing something you can't name. I told myself I wasn't running from Morocco, but maybe I was. Sometimes, when I stopped at night and unrolled my sleeping bag, I'd still see that horizon, endless sand, Sophie's quiet breathing beside me, Daniel's voice fading into wind. The desert had changed something in me. I used to believe travel was about seeing new places. Now I knew it was about surviving them, and surviving yourself along the way. It was in Spain, months later, when I met a traveler named Luis. He'd been driving across North Africa for years, guiding lost tourists, rescuing the ones who went too far. We were sitting outside a small cafe in Granada when he asked about the ring on my hand, a small silver one with sand still caught in its etchings. I told him, briefly, about the 2 days missing in Morocco. He nodded slowly, like he'd heard versions of that story before. Then he said something I still think about. The desert doesn't take people, it keeps them. You just learn how to walk away. For the rest of the evening, we didn't talk about it again. But when I left, he pressed a piece of folded paper into my hand, coordinates written in blue ink. Below it, a single word, return. It took me nearly a year to go back. I told no one. Part of me didn't believe I ever would. When I reached the dunes again, everything looked smaller, or maybe I had grown. There was no marker, no sign, no trace of the jeep or the footprints that had once meant everything. Just sand, moving like time itself, erasing and reshaping. I walked until the sun dipped low, then stopped and placed a small stone, the same one from my pocket, at the crest of a dune. A soft wind rose, as if acknowledging me. And for the first time, I didn't feel haunted. I felt seen. Later that night, back in a nearby town, I checked my phone. No service. But when I connected to Wi-Fi at a small hostel, one unread email appeared. No subject, no name, just 4 words, we made it back. I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no attachment, no trace, no way to know who sent it. Maybe it was Sophie. Maybe it was the desert, one last reminder that not all endings are final, some just echo. People think stories like this end with closure. A lesson, a destination, a line that separates before and after. But that's not how real stories work. They fade, they loop, they return in whispers and dreams. Sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, the headlights hit a stretch of open road, and for a moment I smell sand again. Dry air, old fear, sunlight trapped in memory. And I realized that maybe we never left Morocco completely. Maybe we never leave the places that almost break us. They live inside us, not as pain, but as proof. It's strange how silence can become part of you. After Morocco, I stopped craving noise, no bars, no crowded hostels, no playlists to fill the quiet. I found myself listening to smaller things, the hum of tires on an empty road, wind through tent fabric, the sound of my own breath. Friends said I seemed different. They were right. I'd learned something the hard way, that survival isn't about strength, it's about surrender. For a while, I tried to write the story down. Every time I started, it came out wrong, too dramatic, too neat, too distant. There's no neat version of what happened. There's only truth, and truth isn't cinematic. It's tired, thirsty, scared, and grateful all at once. 5 years later, I was working on a photo project for a travel magazine. The assignment, Hidden Roads of North Africa. When they told me, I almost said no. But something in me, that same quiet pull, said yes. I flew into Marrakesh again. Same airport, same smell of orange blossom and dust, different me. I hired a driver this time, an old man named Youssef, with calm eyes and hands steady on the wheel. When I mentioned I'd once been lost out here, he didn't look surprised. Everyone is lost in the desert once, he said. Some people just don't know it yet. We stopped one evening near a set of dunes that looked hauntingly familiar. I couldn't be sure, the desert shifts every year. But my chest tightened like memory recognized the air before my mind did. We walked a short distance, and there, half buried in sand, was something metallic catching the sunset. It was the frame of a vehicle, rusting, faded white. The same model as the Jeep we drove that day. I knelt beside it, brushing away sand. It wasn't ours, the plates were wrong. But still, it felt like a message. I looked up at Youssef. He nodded slowly, then said, "Desert keeps stories. It doesn't care who they belong to." I took a single photo, no filters, no editing, just the wreck and the endless sand behind it. That image became the final piece in my series. The editor said it was haunting and poetic. I didn't tell her why. When the issue came out, someone left a comment on the magazine's site. "I know that place, I was there once too." No name, no details, but I felt it, that same pulse of memory. Like an echo across time, a whisper saying, "We're still here." I don't believe in fate, but I do believe in patterns. How people, like rivers, are drawn back to where they began. Sometimes I dream of Morocco, not the fear, not the hunger, just the quiet after. That strange, soft peace that comes when the worst is over and you realize you're still alive. And in those dreams, we're walking again. Me, Sophie, Daniel, Kareem. The sun low, the dunes golden. And none of us in a hurry anymore. We don't talk. We just walk until the horizon folds into the sky. And for once, there's no need to find the way back. Years later, when people asked why I still traveled alone, I never gave the real answer. Because how do you explain that the road, for all its danger and silence, was the only place that ever made sense again? I used to think being lost was the worst thing that could happen to a person. But now I know, sometimes getting lost is the only way to see who you are when everything else is stripped away. Morocco didn't break me, it rebuilt me, slower, quieter, more patient. And though the sand no longer clings to my shoes, it still lives somewhere in my chest, reminding me that fear can turn into faith. And endings can still leave you grateful to have made it through. So when I travel now, I carry that silence with me. Not as a wound, but as a compass, because once you've been lost like that, you never look at a map the same way again.